A musician,
a long-distance kayaker,
a businessman,
she looks after animals,
artist,
author.
We interview remarkable people.
They're talented in so many different areas.
You're listening to The Dialogue.
89.7 FM Eastside Radio.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show, where I interview remarkable people. Today on the show, I have Catriona Pollard, CEO, author, and artist. So we're excited to interview Catriona because she's one of those fantastically diverse people who, on the one hand, sits and does PR for phenomenal companies, and on the other hand, is a artist, a basket weaving artist. Basketry, I think the word is, isn't it? So, Catriona, welcome to the studio.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Now, you are on my remarkable people list because you've been doing what you do for a very long time. I mean, you've been working in the PR industry for, what is it, about 18 years?
Oh my gosh, longer. I know it might look like it's only 18 years.
No.
But it's closer to 25 years.
Is it 25
Yeah.
years? Let's just stick with 18. Aren't you like
Okay,
18?
we'll choose 18.
Don't you do that every now and again, when you have a CV now, where you think about how many years you want to put down, you think, this is such an ageist society.
Yeah.
And if you want to actually appear to be sort of middle-aged, reasonably middle-aged, you're going to have to take a few years of your experience off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when you think, the 20-year-olds who have just born in the 90s. It's just, scary.
It is quite scary. So you are a PR specialist, an expert actually. You've written a book called From Unknown to Expert, which I've had a look at, and it's actually very simple. It should have For Dummies on there.
Yeah.
I think because it's a great little book. And you are also an artist. You do the most amazing basketry, but sculpturally. These are not baskets, round baskets that people carry their washing in.
No.
We're talking about pieces.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you sell them through places like Fanuli.
Yeah, absolutely. So my work is very much about the expression of how I see beauty and how I see nature. And it also is expression around consumerism. So it is using found organic material. So I'm the crazy lady that's walking around on Green Waste Night, where everyone's throwing these stunning branches out and these, I use a lot of palm inflorescence, which are the seed pods at the top of palms, which I live on the lower North Shore, so there's lots of those. And, people throw those out, crazy. So I pick them up and I turn them into extraordinary sculptures.
They are extraordinary. I had a look at one, that you had a little video of, and I was quite blown away. I mean, I would buy that, but can't afford it. Because these are not, these are pieces for your home.
Yeah.
I've sort of skipped away because I get so excited about the creative stuff. And essentially what I really want to do is kind of go back and find out where this whole love began. You're a country girl from Byron Bay and spent your growing up years out sort of on the farms, out in the middle of, the country, Dubbo and Byron, and your family were teachers, your mother and father.
Yeah. So I was really lucky enough to live in a in country New South Wales. I call myself a country city girl because the country is still very much a part of my life. I've been in Sydney for over 20 years now, but still consider myself a country girl. And so I was lucky enough to live in a family where we had every single school holidays together. They didn't have to do, the rat race that we have to do in Sydney. And so probably a third of my life by the time I left home was in a tent in a national park, whether it's at the coast or whether it was inland. And, I was climbing trees and I was building fires when I was 5, and my dad treated my sister and I refused to, have this gender roles of, well, boys chop woods, girls don't kind of thing. So I was kind of like very much a tomboy growing up, really, having that connection to nature and running around and just having the freedom that type of parenting allows.
It's interesting because I think those are the experiences that people wish they'd had, but so few people actually do, because not a lot of people grow up in what we term a traditional style family.
Yeah.
Sort of two children and two parents, and being able to actually do that with your family. As educators, as educators, what did your parents impart to you from a business point of view or from a work point of view? Because obviously that's sort of filtered through.
Yeah. So they're really very much hard workers. Like, you work hard, you save to get the things that you want. So I have a very, very strong work ethic, which was absolutely developed as a result of my parents and my upbringing. And also, we were really taught this idea around success and, kind of having a good life, but working for that good life.
Do you have a good life?
I have an amazing life. Absolutely. But it's not necessarily a life that other people would choose to have. But when I say I have an amazing life, is that I have so much gratitude for what I have in my life. So for me, it's about seeing the beauty and about having gratitude for even of the smallest of things and living in that gratitude. And so I have an amazing life. There's absolutely things that I would probably change if I could, but I don't dwell on that. So
you went off to school and actually loved school.
Yeah.
Your sister, though, was dux and cleverer than you, and apparently there was huge competition.
Yeah, absolutely, because she was, we were like 20 months apart. And she was better at sport. She was better at school.
And what's your relationship like today?
Oh, we live like a suburb away from each other, and the trials and tribulations of growing up with a really close sister. There's been periods where we weren't close, and there's periods where we have been close, but we're very close now. She is somebody that is a really important part of my life.
You then went on to university. And did a BA. As you said, it sort of left you with actually no direction and no job and nothing at the end of the BA.
Nothing. I could play pool really well and drink a lot of cider.
And you actually didn't enjoy it. You didn't enjoy the university experience. You were in Canberra.
Yeah, I didn't know. If I had my time over again, I would change it. But I found Canberra just didn't suit me. It was just too cold. I really didn't enjoy living on campus. I need a lot more space. And I feel like I was probably, leaving home, and my parents travel a lot. So I was kind of stuck there without having that really close support network. So I felt like I floundered a little bit, actually. But, it was what it was.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show, where we interview remarkable people. I have Catriona Pollard on the show with me today, CEO, author, and artist. Now, Canberra University, and then you decided you were actually going to do a postgrad, and literally you said you took the postgrad book, opened it up, closed your eyes, and just pointed at something.
Yeah.
And what was that?
So it's what I do today. It was public relations. And, I was one of the first degrees really back then that taught public relations. And I had no idea what public relations was. I had really no idea what I was going to be doing in my postgrad. I just knew that I wanted to do another year because I felt that I needed to get some more specific training about something. I kind of knew that I liked communication. But, I'm still doing it 25 years later. So
18.
Oh, my gosh.
We're going to reduce it.
Shall we change it to 15 years later? 15.
What is public relations? I mean, let's just ask the question, because I spoke to you a little bit before the interview and said to you that, my experience with PR, and I've said this quite often, is that there's so many people out there who are sort of charlatans and who have turned the industry into sort of a money-grabbing experience where people never know what they're getting and there's no transparency. So obviously you've run a company in this space for a very, very long time, which means clearly, you are an expert in that area.
Yeah.
What is PR and what is good PR?
Yeah. So public relations really fundamentally at its most basic, is about communicating with the people that matter to your brand or to your organization, and using the media. And now we have so many other, we have social media and podcasts and so on, using what those types of tactics, those communication channels, to be able to communicate with the people that matter to your brand. And I think that every organization probably can benefit from PR in some way, but the most important thing is to ask those questions around who are the people that matter to your brand, and what kind of stories, what kind of messaging is important to them, and how do I actually get that messaging to them? Is it through articles? Is it through interviews? Is it through podcasts? And I think that the public relations industry, it gets a bad rap because there are lots of people that do bad PR. Absolutely they do. It drives me crazy. It makes me really mad because they don't understand that PR has changed dramatically. The media landscape is so different to what it was, 10 years ago when I started.
You're getting that. You're getting that.
it.
Not only are you getting younger in front of me,
but so they have to move with the times. And so for example, if someone comes to you and says the PR agency will send 5 media releases out a month, it's going to be great, like, walk away, because the media release just doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. We might do one every 6 months if we have to. And the only time you'd ever use that tactic if you want to tell a whole bunch of journalists the same thing at the same time, which is bad PR, really, most of the time.
So good PR is about positioning. It's about actually developing that brand and positioning it in the right place.
Yep.
So if I want more sales for my business, PR is not the way to go.
No, if someone rings me and goes, okay, I'm in this situation, I desperately need to get more customers, I've got to get them walking through the door tomorrow because we're going to go out of business, I actually say PR is not right for you. Really start thinking about advertising and marketing. That's where you need to, and clever marketing and advertising, not just the same old thing. Find somebody who's willing to think outside the square. But PR really is about positioning the people within your organization, the key people within your organization and your organization as experts, as go-to people. People buy from brands that they trust. And what is amazing, PR really good PR allows you to build that trust really effectively. But the key thing to understand is that you don't build that trust within 5 minutes. No. Or, it's like developing a really good friend. You're not going to just decide that is your best friend after meeting them for a second.
I've tried that. When you meet somebody and you really like them and you think, I'd love you to be my best friend. Don't you ever have those moments?
Yeah,
you just think,
you're awesome.
You're so nice.
Yeah.
And then you just think, oh no, it's too hard.
Yeah.
It's too hard to, you've got to really put the work in,
You have to put the work in. But if you do put the work in, they do become your best friend.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? And the PR is the same thing. You consistently put great stories out, use the right tactics. You absolutely build that credibility and that profile and that awareness.
If I were to ask you what your most successful and proud campaign was or has been to date, what is the proudest thing that you've done within the last 12 years?
Let me down to 8. I've had the opportunity to work with incredible people and brands. I think the proudest thing I've done, one of the proudest things I've done, is I worked for the Macquarie University in Sydney, and the new dean about 6 years ago decided that they were going to use an external PR agency, and because he was really forward thinking and understood that the relationship between his faculty and corporate was really essential in terms of getting funds and grants and getting the support of corporates, because governments aren't supporting universities as much as what they used to. And so he went against the grain. He hired me as an external PR agency and said, okay, this is my objective. I want corporate to know about the amazing work that we're doing because we want more funds. And so I developed a strategy, and it was very much about thought leadership of the professors. And you think, well, all of those professors are thought leaders anyway, because how can they be professors and not thought leaders? But interestingly, so many of them didn't consider that they were thought leaders outside their peer group.
Interesting.
So there were so many challenges that I had to actually overcome in terms of the confidence that they had and being able to get them in front of the media. And the strategy that I did back then is still being used now. We still work with them 6 years later, and they've gone through about 4 restructures and I'm still there.
Oh, that's pretty good. No, hanging in through the restructures is pretty impressive.
Yeah. And it's resulted in millions of dollars worth of corporate funding for grants and so on. I think that's really successful. And it really allowed me to explore what I'm really passionate about, which is, what the book is about, is helping people become recognised experts within their field, using media and social media to be able to do that.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show, where we interview remarkable people. Now, I'm going to ask you a bit about you as a person, because obviously, it's all wonderful that you've, started this business, you've driven it, you come from a wonderful country background, but I know that, being in business is hard. It's not easy, and you've spoken about the challenges of being in that business environment. The biggest challenge from a work perspective?
From a work perspective, I feel like there's two actually. One, growing a business in such a changing and diverse and competitive industry such as public relations, for me, is finding the right staff. Absolutely. I feel like if I had been able to find the right staff along the way, my business would be much bigger than what it is. Not that I necessarily want it to be a massive business, but it's been extremely challenging trying to find the right people for me. And also too, I want to work with people that I like. I have to go into that business every day. I don't want to work with people who I don't respect and that doesn't have the same values and ethics as me. It's really, my business is very much built on how I see the world and how I want to be in the world. So finding the right people can be difficult. And I think that the word that keeps coming up for me too when you ask that question is loneliness. And building a business on your own. I started in the sunroom of a rented apartment with a borrowed computer. 5 years ago. No, all those years ago.
Gosh, you are getting younger.
Yeah. The wrinkles are just
just disappearing.
They're just
as the
disappearing
years.
in front of you. And God, that was lonely, really. And I realized at the time, because I did not want to work in corporate anymore. I was so burnt out from corporate. It took me a year to get over, the last job I was in. And I realized I probably worked from home for maybe about 5 years. And I actually realized I was so very isolated, not realizing it at the time. At the time, I was like, yay, I can go to yoga today. Yay, I can go for a walk. But I realized but I worked very, very hard to build the business, really hard to build the business. And it was very isolating.
Do you still feel lonely?
Not as much at times. I don't go home to a family that then I can just offload my day to. So at times I wish I could, I guess.
Was that a choice? Was it a choice not to have a family?
No, not at all. I would have loved to have had a family, absolutely. But it didn't happen, and it took me a long time to get over, this idea that my life wasn't going to be what I thought that it was going to be. And then I got to a point where I realized that my life was a blank canvas and it could be whatever I wanted it to be. So I then explored what I wanted my life to look like and what I wanted it to be. And I live a very conscious life. I always have. So then I use those kind of skills and through the meditation that I do and the yoga that I do and my spirituality to be able to build a really beautiful life. And there's not to say that there's times that it's not hard and it's not lonely and it's not, oh my God, what the hell am I doing moments. But, fundamentally it is beautiful.
One of the things that you've done is you've actually taken some of that energy that you have and looked at, being burnt out, and obviously also, as you said, the boredom of going into the same business over and over and over again for, let's be honest, 25 years as it was. You've actually come outside of that and you've gone into a far more artistic pursuit, which is obviously what we touched on earlier. And this is basketry. Now, I mean, let's be honest, it's a fairly bizarre kind of craft or art form. Most people go and do a bit of painting, they go and do a bit of pottery. I mean, I tried pottery, I was useless at it. I can't paint. You want, if you've got a sort of creative bone in your body, but you said you can't paint, can you?
No, I can't draw. I can barely draw a stick person.
But you can create phenomenal pieces.
Yeah.
So where does this come from? I mean, obviously the connection to the country is one of the things that has kept you in this area.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the basketry, how you came into that and what it does for you.
So about 5 years ago, I was feeling so burnt out. I really didn't know what I was doing in my business, and I was just finding it so challenging. And I did some reflection, and I realized that while creativity is in my life every day, because I'm writing and so on, at that point I wasn't telling my stories. Like every week I tell one of my like a story or a thought, an extended thought about what I'm doing and through on my database. And at that time I just thought, well, I need to explore creativity in a different way. And I have done pottery and I've done all of that craft because I'm really, I'm very expressive. I love to express in some way. And I saw this, I'd done a few little day courses here and there in basketry. And then I booked into this residential at this craft school in Mittagong. It's amazing. They have summer school and winter school. And I did it and I just fell in love with it. And I think that what it was an expression of my connection to nature. And over the years, I've further developed it. And it really interestingly, I've only really talked about it and publicly really shared it in the last year. I had a solo exhibition this time last year. And prior to that, I really kept it on the down low because my A-type personality kept on like popping up going, well, I wonder if I could do this and I wonder if I can do that. I wonder if I use this in this way, I can do blah, 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 blah. And I needed to keep on like reining myself back because for me, it needed to be an expression of my joy. It needed to be an expression of my creativity away from the computer, away from the business, away from people's perspectives on what it was. And so it's really only been in the last year that I've really been talking about it and sharing it.
You said it can take up to 6 months for you to create one piece.
Yeah.
So it's quite time consuming, and obviously you have to have quite a lot of concentration. It must be quite meditative.
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did. You did.
I suddenly sounded a little bit odd.
Well, it is, and I feel like a part of it's an extension of the meditation that I do. But at times it's not meditative. At times it's you want to tear your hair out.
Really? Does it drive you crazy?
Because the piece that I finished, that I just showed you, it required so much patience. And I think what basketry does for me, or the sculpture work that it does for me, one, it really allows me to tell my stories through the work that I do. But it also teaches me a lot of stuff. It teaches me to breathe, unpick, redo, unpick, redo. It requires a lot of patience and a lot of a lot of those skills that we just don't have, or that we're just forgetting about. And I think, I look at people and they're just, they're on their phones and they're staring at this piece of glass and they're not looking up and they're not seeing the beautiful cloud in the sky and they're not seeing that leaf flying past in the breeze. They're not looking at the sunset. And for me, the work that I do through my art is very much a reflection on going back to the traditional ways of seeing the world and interpreting that through sculpture.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show, where we interview remarkable people. On the show today, I have Catriona Pollard, CEO, author, and artist. We talked about your PR endeavors. Can you see yourself running this business for much, much longer? I mean, is there a move into more full-time art, or are you happy with both of these disciplines kind of continuing in parallel?
They're going to run in parallel for the next little bit. I have a mortgage.
Yes.
So, financially, you have to make decisions based on that, living in Sydney and, being a sole income earner. But I'm definitely, just doing the one thing every day doesn't work for me. So I'm definitely exploring how I can, I do a lot of training and a lot of speaking. And at the moment, I do talk a lot about personal branding and PR and social media. But I'm really thinking about, developing a product where I can teach people to not necessarily make a basket, but, teach them this ability that I have and that I've developed about seeing two sticks or a pile of sticks. And instead of seeing sticks, what I see is the life within those sticks, what those sticks could be, what shapes they could be, how we can tell our stories by combining those sticks or binding those sticks together or weaving them. And that's kind of what I'm exploring at the moment.
We've come to the end of the interview, which is pretty sad because it flies quickly. The last question I want to ask you is, I believe everyone has an X factor, the one thing that gets them to continue when times are really tough. And there are huge, big challenges in life and things that happen along the way. If I were to ask you what your X factor is, what is your X factor?
My X factor is definitely about seeing the beauty in things, even in the darkest of places. There always is a light, and being able to actually have gratitude for the ability to be able to explore that light.
Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your life story with us, and also giving me your book, which I'm really excited to be able to read and use, From Unknown to Expert by Catriona Pollard. And also just the fact that you're doing this art on the side makes me feel quite inspired. I'm going to go home and have a look at what I've got lying around.
Oh,
and see
pick up a stick.
What I can create. The Dialogue will be back next week with another incredible interview.